I have 6:02. It's time to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting of Tuesday, May 11th. Roll call, I'm missing Commissioner Karim Jackaman, and the other commissioners that are not here, no longer part of the commission. I guess we can move right into the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start out, as usual, with the citizen comment period. Did anybody sign up, Marissa? We had no one sign up for the citizen comment period, so we're rolling right into business items. We'll start out, as we usually do, with the approval of the minutes. I trust all my co-commissioners have had time to look at, peruse, and correct, if necessary, anything from the 13 April Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting with any adjustments, any discussion about that? No? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes, to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as read.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. The minutes from April 13th, 2021 are approved. I've had a request from the city attorney to, yeah, I'm sorry. That's why you sit next to me. That's why she couldn't move you.
Well, she could flip me and Valor over there.
Okay, give me a box of rubber bands.
Can I have a vote on the motion to approve the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to approve the minutes passes unanimously. Moving on to business items, I've had a request from the Attorney Commission to, the city attorney to rearrange the order of some of these business items because she may not be able to stay the whole meeting. So we're moving B4 up to B1. We're going to start with the discussion of the draft zoning ordinance. Okay. Now, what we did last month was pass out the corrected or our presumed corrected copy of the draft zoning ordinance for the commission to approve and see if we missed anything, added in last minute suggestions. The plan is not to necessarily change a whole lot, even if we miss things, because we've been fooling around with this for like, well, 3 years. Any glaring or otherwise corrections that anybody saw perusing ordinance number 13? We're somewhat at a, I can't say disadvantage, we can move this along faster now than maybe anticipated because we're down to we have a quorum tonight, but we only have 2 commissioners that really want behind the scene working with this diligently for 3 years. Myself and Karen have been reading this thing over and over and over again for 3 years. So I'm basically looking at you, Dave, and you, Art, to see if there's anything you noticed that jumped out at you.
I have not many, but maybe 10, 12 comments to discuss, not necessarily that I thought were wrong, but just comments. And do we want to get into that level of detail at this point in time, or?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what we'd like to do. We have to do, this has to be a working meeting. We have to get as much done as we can while we're here tonight.
All right, well, I certainly don't think we could go page by page. That might take a little bit too long. I don't know, Dave, do you have any that you want to interject, or?
I'm about half through reading this one. I didn't really see anything that was a major glaring.
I didn't see,
Keep it from moving forward to the next level in that area, and then handling some of that back when it comes back to the city council. In that manner, I mean, I like our deal with the overlay with the districts and those kind of things. I'll create a mock-up, I'll give us more flexibility, make it a lot easier for Nancy and the city to handle some of this stuff for us. But as far as the language, all that's been.
again, mine are fairly minor. I leave it up to the rest of you whether it's worth 10 minutes to go over them or not.
It is. We worked on this for 3 years.
Yeah, I know, and I wasn't here to start, and to be honest, this is the first time that I've been able to actually, and I won't lie and say I read every word in this, but I did review, or at least look through all of it. The very first one I have is on page 1, under 1.0104, applicability, and this is a question, and I think I know the answer, but it says compliance with the zoning ordinance, structure or appenditures located within the city. Does it, the ETJ come into this to play too, or? I mean, I know that when I was on Bulverde, that we at least had control over housing developments, but. So it's not ETJs are included in this?
Sir, our zoning, because we are type A general law city, is going to be limited to in city limits.
Okay, so if somebody wants to do what they want to do in the ETJ, they can.
We have some regulations that can extend to the ETJ, but unfortunately zoning isn't one of them.
Okay, that was my question. I didn't mark them, but so I just have to leaf through and find them all again. Again, there weren't that many. That raises the question, I know that we go to the next class at 5,000. Is that correct?
Right, so when a city hits the 5,000 mark, it has the right to go through the process to become a home rule city. And so, and at that point adopt a charter and then qualify for a different set of laws. So that is
I'm
something
assuming that we're
perceivable in the near
close.
future.
Are we close to that mark now, or?
We
We don't have the most recent census results yet, I assume.
No,
That's-
this will not
that's-
be out until about May 27th. Some of the demographic data that the state collects is projecting that we're probably just going to be
Just under?
under 5,000. We're going to be somewhere between 4 to 5,000.
Because I know we've done a lot of growth.
Huh?
We've done a lot of growth.
We have, but
Internal.
it has to be that population, and it doesn't appear, now, I could be wrong, but it doesn't appear that we're going to be reaching it quite yet.
We talk about, I'm sorry, can I just a second? Okay. we talk about growth, but from where we sit for the last X number of years, when you look at what's going on in the city was almost built out 3 or 4 years ago. And so we're not really talking about, I don't know if we're really talking about growth.
Well, there's
Well-
infill.
I'm sorry?
Infill. Where I
Yeah,
live,
yeah.
there's houses going up all over the place, so.
Yeah, but still, I think the majority of the growth itself is just switching demographics. A lot of the older population is leaving, and younger population are moving into those homes. Unless I'm wrong, please correct me, because that's the way I'm looking at things. We're almost built out, so I don't know what our top end is, to be truthful with you. Unless we develop some of the more residential areas, we might not make 5,000, depending on what we decide to put in there.
And I have a question, say when the results do come out, say we're at 4,700, okay? So we're under the 5,000. We don't get to change anything till we hit the 5,000, and would that be 10 years from now, under a new census? Or could we, I mean, how does that
So
work?
the answer is no, and I forget the specific language that it uses, but, and Charlie Zeck is our expert on charters and when you can move towards, adopting a home rule charter. And what I always recommend to smaller clients is when you start hitting that 4,000-ish range, if that is something that the city wants to explore, then that's when we call him in and he goes through and does that legal analysis. Because the definition isn't actually residents, I forget, it's persons or something like that. So then, you have to go in and make sure that we've counted, every baby, everybody, because it's, because of the definition of what state law says, counts towards reaching your 5,000 for a charter. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna hit the handy-dandy computer, that way I can give you that exact language. But like I said, once you hit the 4,000 or 4,000 plus range, that's the time to start looking at that, because if it's something that the city is interested in, then we get that on the agenda, bring it forth to council. Mr. Zeck does his thing, and then he lets you know, now's the time, or now is not quite yet the time.
So we
Cynthia,
don't have to wait for another.
Right, you would not necessarily have to wait another 10 years for the census.
I think this is something that can be moved on to, put on the agenda for next month. I don't want to hold Cynthia up doing a lot of research on something that is not necessarily a gee whiz. It's something we need to know as background, but it's not something we need to move forward tonight. What else did you have for us, Art?
Okay, on page 21, under neighborhood mixed use, I just felt it was a little vague on what is allowed in a mixed use. I do understand mixed use, but it's not very well defined in there. And I don't, and to be honest with you, when I went further into the document, I did see more definition of what is actually allowed, so not sure it needs to be put here or not.
My understanding is it didn't necessarily have to be put in that particular,
It is defined later on.
Okay.
And I did see that.
But,
This is before I got to it, when I said, what is allowed,
okay,
so.
okay. Because in the use chart, I think that will probably clarify most of your questions.
It does.
Okay.
It does better. And the same thing under public and institutional districts. I just felt that it didn't, it talks about schools and things like that, and I just felt that things like private schools maybe should be included in, and that's on page 25.
Did we miss that in the use chart?
I didn't see private schools anywhere, but is it in there?
In the use chart, under school, public or private,
Okay,
and it is permitted in the public and institutional district.
Okay.
well, then maybe we just say that up under, on page 25, public or private. again, a lot of these were just questions, not serious considerations for corrections.
Well, it's a good exercise, because if we have a public hearing, it'll be pretty much the same thing. They'll have gone through it, picked up stuff, and we'll have to go back and refer to it. None of us are gonna be an expert on any one particular thing unless they ask the same thing that you just asked us. In which case, we can look, we can sit up here and pontificate a little bit.
On page 43, short-term rental, did we give consideration to all these sprouting up Airbnbs and the other short-term rentals? Are those allowed, or?
So short-term rentals, how we've got them set up is that the city would have those specific zoning areas where short-term rental would be allowed. And so we've got them set up for basically the mixed-use overlay districts, the neighborhood commercial, and community commercial district. And that's based on prior history of the city where short-term rental in the strictly residential areas received a lot of negative input,
Boy, I know.
Prior to.
But it's hard to
And at this,
legislate against.
yeah, at this particular point in time, there isn't any legislation that tells us for sure whether the cities, what type of regulations that the city can consider with short-term rental. This is us meeting the best of both worlds with what we have and what we know right now. There is pending legislation, and there has been pending legislation, I think, since 2015, thereabouts. But so far, there isn't anything that precludes the city from adopting short-term rental regulations.
For some cities, this has become a big issue.
Right. Some
I don't think
cities
it's
have
here,
gone
but-
to and attempted to just out and out prohibit it within the city, and those cities that have done so are the ones that have borne the wrath of
Yeah, they've
the
suffered for it
courts.
since then.
Yes, sir.
And again, this was before I got to the back, and in the back, reading more, it sounded like, yeah, it's probably allowable under the regulations.
Yes, we have several districts where short-term rental would be permitted.
Of that nature. Okay. I really did look at every page. Didn't necessarily read every word. Had to do it over many days, though.
I think short-term rental, those of us been in longer have heard it over and over and over again, so it is one of our high points, I guess, or hot button items. So it may be good to be up to snuff and be able to answer questions right off the top of our head on short-term rentals, because we know we're gonna hear it again.
Well, done right, they're fine.
Yeah.
I've used them.
Yeah, myself.
But I also heard horror stories where they're not done right. So.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you can control that, but there might be a way.
What's the word we used within the city attorney? Can you remember? You said we can't prohibit them, but what was the phrase we
Restrict.
used? We wouldn't even restrict. Just somehow we can.
The districts that they are allowed in, or not limit, but identify the districts.
Right. We've identified the districts where they are allowed in.
Yeah.
And so, so far, like I said, the Texas legislature hasn't come through and said we're completely prohibited from trying to regulate them. Will that pass in the near future? Who knows? But because it's such a smaller section of our proposed ordinance here, I think we're okay with including it and then seeing what happens with the legislation.
Must have been asleep during this section.
And I'm going to jump in here. The word I was floundering on was inhabitants. So the word inhabitants has a different meaning under the law versus resident or citizen or any of those other terms that we normally use.
That begs the question then. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, Ms. Kane. And I believe you've been here, what, 19 years? And so in your mind, you've seen quite a bit of growth, air quotes, in Garden Ridge. What is your opinion of the projection? Do you think we'll ever be at that point? Or when we may be at that point? I don't want to put you at the spot, but I'm just saying, well, yeah, before another 5 years, or what? What do you think?
For being able to, for meeting that 5,000 population,
And
or 5,000 inhabitants?
Right.
inhabitants, but the way I understood it, City Attorney, that gives us the option of
Right.
putting it
Right.
to the citizens whether or not
Right.
they want to be,
Right.
what's called.
Yeah, that will be part of the process.
Yeah.
I must have missed it. I
And
had
you
some-
know,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
You said what? I'm sorry.
I know I had some comments on the site triangle, and I missed it. I can't find it.
Well, I was asking Ms. King, was going to answer the question when she thought it might be projected, or go ahead. So you have time, don't rush.
I think it's relatively soon. You know, we are pretty well grown out residentially.
Okay.
You do have some smaller tracts that a developer could come in and put several houses on, which will help that, increase that population. If the medium density aspect of this new zoning ordinance is approved and moved on, you know, and we're able to move forward with that, that's going to help. I don't know, maybe somewhere within 5 years is what I'm kind of thinking. And yes, the demographics in the city are changing. So that is also going to have an impact on that, the number of inhabitants.
Part of the issues, Jim, is we're becoming more a percentage, a higher percentage, becoming more transient type of resident, and the fact that we have more military in here, and the populace is younger populace is more transportable. So we come in, the older populace are staying, nesting, and as we get older, there's not an alternative, so moving out. The newer ones come and move with the jobs market and go in and out of that. So some of it, even though it looks like a big transition of people coming in and out, there's also probably the same number that are going out. And because we can look in our own neighborhood about the houses that come up, and normally the normal stay in a house is about 3 years in certain houses, especially in the military community part of our neighborhood. So I see them come and go about every 3 or 4 years. So the population's not really growing. It may grow 100 here and then 75 move out or something. But as we look at the mix of who lives here and the ages and type of jobs and everything that are in the current area, I think it's going to be, probably won't be as fast as we think it might be, because even what we're doing with the commercial retail side, if everything happens on the other side of 2252, there's a large portion of that that won't add to our residents unless they move here for a specific reason to work at a job.
I'd like to add that I think having the elementary school and then now having a high school right outside of our city limits is going to have a huge impact on, perhaps it's going to be the younger families coming in.
I couldn't find it.
Couldn't find it?
My basic question, I can remember because it did 2 weeks ago. On the site triangle, I think we allocated 15 feet. You was 25 on intersections, of road intersections. 3 years and came up with an answer that 25 feet was enough.
Dave, did you have anything else that you could remember?
Not that I remember, but I mean, because a lot of the stuff that would stand out were the stuff that we beat to death
Yeah,
on that. So those are familiar, coming up and looking at some of those situations. And I know some of what's our talking on that, what we, kind of looking at some other communities' data that came in when we figured that setback. And I don't know if that's what we currently have. We might have enlarged it just a little bit, and we decided to stay at that 25 kilometer line.
I think what's in this ordinance is greater than what we currently have.
Yeah, it was increased some of what we had, because it
I
wasn't
don't
very
have
much,
my
it was like
other
15.
one with me, but.
It was way short. Well, instead of going 30 or 40, we settled kind of in the middle.
Road says not enough.
Yeah.
I have one more, it's just a question, it's not in here anywhere. It's just 20-some years ago when I looked at where it is. It seems to be that there was some kind of state law that you're supposed to provide a certain amount of low-income housing. And I don't see anything like that in here, zoning laws. It's not a law.
I don't believe that is.
No, the only time that you're going to have housing requirements placed on you is that if the city participates in certain federal programs, of which this or receives grants from the city which are funded via federal monies, and the city doesn't, or to date has not participated in those types of programs.
ooh, did he say that word? Did he say that word?
I heard him.
Sorry.
Rubber bands. Let's get a stack of rubber bands.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
He must not have watched any of the prior meetings where we had.
Commissioner Jackman, what we did, we got down to the business items, we moved 5B4 to the head of the discussion rather than in its normal place or the written place of number 4. So we skipped over. You did not miss anything. We just moved number 4 up to number 1. Okay. Did you have anything that jumped out at you that we overlooked or you wanted to discuss in particular?
I know I submitted my comments to Marissa. The only comment that I was just trying to get some clarification, or maybe it's on section 2.06.02. It's regarding fencing in residential areas for subdivisions. I was just I know on the draft ordinance it states a solid masonry fence is required when the subdivision backs to Collector Street or larger thoroughfare. But how about for subdivisions that, does that mean, I'm just trying to make sure we I guess, cover the fencing on, I know we don't have a whole lot of land for, major subdivisions, big tracts of land, but if there is some for whatever's remaining in the city, trying to maybe require that fencing is to be put in say, maybe not in the entire perimeter, but maybe in the entrance, make sure that's been put in, or fencing is to be put in the main entrance of a subdivision.
I'm not sure I'm following you, Jakeem.
What page was that?
It's page 59.
Okay. I saw that too.
Well, it calls for a solid masonry fence is required when subdivision backs to a collector street or larger thoroughfare, but if it's not on a collector street or larger thoroughfare, just wondering if, looking at options to maybe require fencing in those subdivisions or proposed subdivisions.
You're saying that we required, the way I looked at it was fencing is gonna cost money, and the developer, if he didn't have to do it, I don't know, well, it may be something that.
I guess for like a gated
Yeah,
subdivision more, I guess it doesn't really get into the details of that, like in our old ordinance, it does talk about perimeter fencing for subdivisions, and it calls out what that fencing is to be. I know with this, we can't dictate what materials to be used now with, you know, what the legislative.
or can we? Does the fencing fall under the,
No, fencing does not. So we can
Oh, okay.
dictate fencing, what type of fencing, and certainly if we want to, you know, consider adding additional fencing, that one would fall in the realm of policy decisions. So that one's just up for discussion amongst the commission on.
Yeah, it's just something I, just looking at, as fencing, just because in my current community, that's been kind of a little bit of an issue.
okay.
And so just seeing if we wanted to,
Why don't we, as a commission, look at it? Certainly not taking it forward to city council anytime soon. We're trying to get it there as soon as possible. But as a commission, write down and for homework, to look at it and see what we think about the points that Commissioner Jackman is pointing out to us, because I'm having a hard time, to be truthful with you, digesting exactly what you're saying. I just have to go through it and think about everything the same way or along the same lines that you did. And at this point in time, I can't say that I had. Fencing was not one of the ones that, it wasn't a high interest area to me, you know. Certainly the ones, short-term rentals, the apartments, all that kind of stuff, that was jumping out at me, and I said, I know I gotta review those and have those under my belt. Fencing, I didn't think so, but if it's been a problem in your neighborhood, then it means I need to look at it a little differently than I have in the past. So I think what we can do is put that probably on the agenda to talk about it again on our agenda for next month, without making any big changes, but discuss it again next month.
I do have
fencing.
one question
Okay.
on fencing. And this ordinance is for new, correct? Or if there are changes, then it falls under this ordinance?
If someone, what will happen with this ordinance is if somebody is putting a new fence up or they're replacing a fence, they're going to have to be able to, they're gonna have to follow the ordinance.
Right. But otherwise, I'm just thinking of my neighborhood. It has fencing all around, especially if that backs up to 3009. However, it is not solid masonry.
Right.
But unless that subdivision changes, what is there,
Or if they replace the fence,
right, if they replace the fence, that's one thing, but if they don't,
then it's,
it stays.
stays in place.
Yeah. Just wondering.
But again, I think we can just put that on, it's a short section, so it's section D, and we just look at it again. And
This mainly is pertaining to the backside of the development to a major street?
Dave, that's exactly what I'm trying to digest exactly what you're.
Because it says for the backing of that, so it's not talking front entryway, whatever goes to the major street.
Side or back, the faces
Yeah, because we say subdivisions backing to major. So however that plat's laid out, it's on a major street. So we may have to look at the verbiage there.
I understand what you're saying, so it's in your view. Drive down some of these developments on both sides of the road, they got concrete fences on both sides. It feels like you're in a canyon or something. I realize there might be safety involved with that, but it certainly is not a extra pleasant ride down that road.
But is that possible in the city of Garden Ridge, the way it's laid out now? What's left that might fit that criteria? That's what, you know, say that,
My community is all that we are, so some people have some solid, pretty good.
For clarification, I think what Mr. Jackman is talking about is that the entire perimeter of the subdivision be fenced by the developer, correct? And not be left up to the individual property owners that perhaps are not backing up to a major roadway, being able to put up any kind of fence they want as long as they meet the materials we require, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
well, if we don't want to move it forward and put on an agenda for next month, does anybody sitting here tonight can think of some verbiage that's going to cover what we think we want?
Well, one of the questions would be, are we aiming it at the developer to provide that as a requirement for them? Or is that also a requirement for the homeowner?
My understanding is it's the developer.
It could go both ways.
Yeah. That's why we need the verbiage, to make it clear what we're talking about.
I think you need to add in that only the portion of the subdevelopment that backs or faces onto that major thoroughfare only.
Because you're talking about a lot of money making that developer
Well,
lock in the whole neighborhood.
They do it. I mean,
Well, I've seen it.
yeah. They just pass the cost on to the buyers. But
It depends if we want to price ourselves out of the residential market here in Garden Ridge.
Go ahead, Ken.
I don't remember if there was a particular reason that we said that for whatever, and I'm thinking of shirts. The subdivisions that have homes that either are side of the homes or whatever onto a 3009, they have those solid masonry walls. And my thought, that's for noise, I'm sure, and privacy and all that. But I don't remember if there was a reason why we put it in here that it had to be a solid masonry fence. Not just fencing required like it says in item 3, but it says a solid masonry fence. I'm not sure I remember why we said that. It was my theory, sorry. My watch.
So you're suggesting take out masonry?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there was a reason why we said solid masonry fence.
there would be reasons why a developer would do it is to make it more sellable for noise abatement and privacy, but,
Because it is off a major roadway, that's the.
yeah. I would think, I agree, if you just take out masonry, it has to be fenced. And you already described what is acceptable for fencing for materials. Why tell them they have to do masonry? They can do whatever they want to sell it.
They want to put masonry, fine, and pass it on to the.
Which they do.
Well, I'm looking for a consensus then amongst the commissioners to change that word.
Kevin?
If everybody, if everybody
Yeah.
wants to, would that satisfy yourself?
That would. I think the masonry is a little, I guess,
Overkill?
it might be, yeah, it might, like, Art had pointed to, sometimes it make you feel enclosed, like, but, especially on that main entrance, but at least maybe changing, I'm okay with what Mr. Porter recommended, take out masonry.
Can I see, can I have,
So are you
consensus?
making a motion?
Can I have a motion to change the word masonry then?
We don't need a motion?
Do
We don't need a motion.
Consensus?
To change the wording? I'll say.
Consensus? Art?
I
Okay.
like it.
Karen?
I think it's fine that we take it out because we give them the option, number 3, if they want to do it.
Okay. Dave? And Jacqueline, okay. Let's take out the word masonry.
Keep the word solid.
I take solid out too.
Yes.
Solid masonry.
Yeah.
Yeah, take out solid.
I just caught something that I think y'all may want to look at.
Okay.
Like, go down to, sorry. Go down on the same page, page 59, go down to materials. And it has vinyl materials that produce a similar appearance. Do y'all, I just caught that. It just jumped out at me. So take out vinyl materials? Okay.
Yes.
Chairman Miller, my apologies, but if you don't mind, I must be excused at this particular point in time. I believe that meeting is going to be fairly short. If y'all will text me, and I will return promptly in this direction if y'all need me.
I think we'll be able to survive, and I'm sure you'll hear about any change we make one way or the other.
But I will be very nearby, and so please, if y'all need me back, y'all just let me know.
Okay, thank you. So to return to where I was with Commissioner Jacqueline.
Thank you.
This is probably a good a time as any. How do you pronounce your last name?
Jackman?
Okay, I've been saying it like that for a while.
No, it's fine.
It always makes me think that I'm saying it wrong. Okay.
The other comment I had, just more for, it's on page, it's regarding pools, swimming pools.
Okay.
And that's found on page 72. And just me driving around town in different neighborhoods, I have noticed where people have, residents have put in, say their pool pump outside the fence, and it's in view from the street. And some do better jobs than others in regards to screening those pumps. Just wondering if we want to consider adding that screening is required, or it could be done with landscape, or that the pumps need to be placed behind a fence if there is a fence, and if there's no fence on your property, then do some type of screening to cover up those pumps, just more of a visual when you're driving down the street. Just some pumps look cleaner than others. Like for the commission to get your thoughts. It's just something I noticed just driving around different parts of the neighborhoods on pumps.
It's not something that I personally had taken notice of, so it didn't offend me when I drive around the town. And the other thing, other qualifier I always think of when I drive around Garden Ridge, we have so many intermingled subdivisions that some of them are older, and the ordinance back then didn't have anything in it, and some of them are newer. And, you know, they may have met the letter of the law way back when, but they'd be grandfathered in if it preceded this ordinance at all. In search of a problem, I don't know.
It's just more me looking at it
I
as
understand.
a visual, and
I certainly understand.
and since we are going through this whole exercise, it on the draft, it doesn't talk about screening of the pumps if there are located outside, you know, a fence that's, especially in street view. But it, just wanted to get your thoughts and, or my other fellow commissioners, and that seems to, we want to address, or if it's okay,
Thoughts?
On that ordinance, item number 4, it says, swimming pools shall be located entirely behind the rear plane of the primary residence. We're talking about the back wall. We're also talking about the side wall straight back. If it's outside of the fence, the pool's behind the rear plane outside of the fence, though, that pump in that would not be, as it says, located entirely behind that plane, or is it plane run from property line on the backside of the house?
It says the rear plane of the structure itself,
All the way across.
all the way
Inside
across the structure itself, not from property line to property line.
Plus, it doesn't really, this, section B doesn't talk about pool pumps, it's just pool itself.
Right. it's,
right.
Now, some of the private subdivisions require screening of your pool pumps, even including your air conditioning units, or wherever you locate your trash receptacles. A lot of the gated communities do require that. Or I'm not going to say gated because not all of them are gated, but private communities do require that. So this,
Is that
Adding
something that
this-
we'd have to look at the HMO, the homeowner association
I'm
rules
s-
and regulations that they have that they may be in our, I
They
don't
can-
remember when I wrote that thing for Wooden Geos, I don't remember.
they have to comply at least comply with our zoning ordinance. Your covenants can be more restrictive than our zoning ordinance. But I'm just adding in for consistency,
Right.
it could be something that is placed into the ordinance.
I think you will find that HMOs are more restrictive than what this needs to be. I don't see anything wrong with including that, but it may be something that we don't need to do because the HMOs usually take care of that, because the one I live in is very restrictive, so.
But not all subdivisions in
the Right.
city are under
HMOs.
HMO,
homeowners association.
right. So, Nancy, I was just, since you've been here, has that been a problem? Like maybe residents complaining about that? No?
I don't recall any complaints really about that. I think most of them are probably located in places where they aren't visible, but yes, there are some that are located where they are, but I don't recall any complaints.
Okay.
And again, if they're there now, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. They'd be grandfathered in.
Right, it's for new.
Or if they're existing, we can require them to
I'm about to say,
Yeah, then how would that be changing the fact that currently in place, not redoing or anything, is grandfathered? And then we pick out pool pumps and whatever, as saying we can make them, you know, that seems like we're kind of.
Well, it's the same thing as if someone has a vehicle parked in the grass, we require them to have it parked on a parking pad. They've got to comply with that aspect of the ordinance.
Yeah, that's on the ordinance now.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, but if it's somebody that's not in compliance, we can make them comply. We can require compliance. So I think you can do it with your pool pumps. I could be wrong, but I think we can require it. And most likely, we aren't going to address it unless we do get complaints.
It seems to me though that somebody parking in grass, that's a mobile thing. That's not having to relocate or put in a fencing or something. You know, because you're not supposed to park on the grass, you've got a driveway. Park on the driveway. People park on the grass, I think, because they have multiple cars and they don't want to, the last person in just pulls up on the grass. Well, to me, that's just somebody not wanting to move cars. It's not like making them, you know, put in a whole new thing.
I think at this point, what I would do is ask for consensus that it needs to be changed. If we don't have a consensus, then we can continue to struck the conversation about it. I know how I feel about it, but I don't get to vote unless this is a tie. So I don't want to sit up here and pontificate, you know, voice my opinion unnecessarily. Other than to say, I think it's a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah, we might be
So
far
can I get a
reaching.
consensus that we need to change it? Or can I get a motion that we need to change this or add the screening of the swimming pool pumps to section,
Are we having discussions before we vote?
You don't need to make a motion, it can be consensus.
and the concession? Consensus, I thought that we were having a discussion now, Karen. I thought we were doing.
It's a section, if you're looking for the reference, it's 2.06.04D.
Yeah, I've got that in front of me, yes, thanks.
Personally, I think HOAs are more restrictive, and I don't know that we need to mess with this. And the HOAs could certainly require it, and a lot of them do.
I think it's a good idea, but I also think you get started down this road, you could just add thousands and thousands of restrictions, and I don't think that's the purpose of this ordinance. It's a planning ordinance for general guidance to residents and contractors, and I agree, probably a good idea, but I think that may be a bit too far.
No, I believe that when you put swimming pools in, you get all kinds of fencing that you put in, 4 foot high, whatever, and that stuff. And so all of that is behind that perimeter fence already in there. So, you know, I believe if we look maybe, because I remember when I built my pool in 2009, that my pool pumps and all that had to be behind that fencing, in that perimeter fencing. So like pool pumps coming outside of the fence maybe jumping around what ordinance we already have in the city with everything, with that pool being included behind the perimeter fence.
No.
Because I pushed mine out, the fencing out to include where my pool equipment was, to go around because of the city ordinance pertaining to the pool security sections in there. So some of those may be in violation of the city current ordinance by having all their pool equipment outside of that back perimeter fence. Because I think that's all considered as part of the swimming pool in there, because I know that's the way it was when I got my permit to put it in. That was all included behind that fencing.
Well, it's apparent that we don't have a consensus. Commissioner Jackson, what else you got?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. Anybody else got some other oversights or perceived oversights in the document itself?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well,
Well,
we covered the pages that I managed to cover so far. I apologize, but.
well, I understand. But by the same token, somewhere down the line, as a commission, we're going to have to say, okay, we're through messing with it, and we're going to have a public hearing and see what the public pulls out of it and respond to that. Certainly, it's a, what they call a working document, and will be some changes, but I think we're all in agreement that the amount of time we put into it, we think we've got everything that's necessary, and we're not gonna make any wholesale changes from here on out. I'm gonna return to the agenda. We're at 5B 1 now. That's the discussion items applicable to Planning and Zoning Commission that discussed at the May City Council meeting. The one thing that I remembered was, well, the obvious thing was they accepted the resignation of Commissioner Heyer. And I think they accepted the resignation of Commissioner Valdez the month before, as I recall. The other thing that I thought was applicable to the planning and zoning, although they didn't discuss it at length, it was some statistics that the city secretary spoke about, and in regard to the voting in the city. And out of 3,589 registered voters, our city had 989 residents that voted. And my point was, and you've heard me say this over and over again, and I'm contrarian and cynic by nature. I wondered about the apathy in Garden Ridge, although we usually outshine our other county cities and things like that. I don't think we did coming in at 27.5% with this election. And I say that to say apathy for a election of that sort, which I thought would garner more, I really thought would garner more interest than it did. I'm wondering how we're going to get people, or how much we should even try to get people excited about a draft ordinance change, and we can't get them excited about voting for their mayor. And that's just the way I feel about it. I mean, it was like an epiphany to me when I sat there. I said, oh, we're wasting our time. Not wasting our time, but putting way too much thought, effort, and everything else in how to present it to the citizens that, unless I'm wrong, really don't care. Somebody rescue me and slap me and tell me, Jim, you're being way too much of a cynic.
No, I don't think you are, but I think with this, our job is to make it available to them, to make meetings available, the public meetings available. If they don't show and they don't care, then it's on them.
I would agree with that 100%, but I mean, we were talking about going into, 2 or 3 meetings, town halls, websites, flyers. Yeah, and I think what we're gonna do, I think what we should do, and not what we're gonna do, what we should do, in my opinion, is narrow down to what we're gonna do, put it out there, and they'll have an opportunity, ample opportunity, I might add, to respond to it, look at it like they want to, and get back to us, but not having 3 or 4 meetings at the community center have it on the website and just beating them over the head with it. Because I don't think it's gonna do any good. I really don't think it's gonna do any good. Ma'am,
In front of you, you have an agenda that was provided to us by our city attorney. And it's a sample agenda of what you would see on like a workshop meeting. So I think that what she has put on here is something that we could definitely do, and I think it would be sufficient. Create a presentation, PowerPoint basically outlining the highlights, which is something the commission has already discussed. Make it available online for public viewing. We can hold a public hearing during the same meeting. We can receive comments. We would give notice through the webpage, the Grapevine, anywhere that we would accept questions and ask for them in advance and before posting the agenda. And then we would be able to list these questions. If we're getting multiple of the same questions or very similar questions, we can list them on the agenda so that they can be specifically addressed and people will know they will be addressed. So that would hopefully limit any additional questions when you go into the question and answer session, which is on the second page. But this was provided to us by our city attorney as just a sample of what we could do as a workshop meeting, just one meeting.
for myself, just a quick perusal, especially taking into account my prior comments, this is more than enough. Like everybody else what I would like to do is sign it as homework, and then we can comment on it our next meeting, put it on the agenda for our next meeting. But to me, just perusing it now, it's more than enough. I don't know how everybody else feels about it. I think I would like to see maybe some more of those hot ticket items that everybody gets all up in arms about and point out, specifically townhomes, hotels, apartments, things of that nature, so they don't ask a lot of questions about that. If we point them out beforehand, like we did, what is a PUD, then I think that might be enough.
I think you'll find that the vast majority of the citizens is not necessarily apathy. It's if they read through this document, it doesn't really affect them. It's not hitting their hot buttons. It's not anything that's going to change their life. They're busy as it is, and so they're not going to. The ones that really get ticked off at something, they're the ones that are going to show up and make comments. So I agree that I think putting it out there for people, give them time to read it, schedule a time for them to submit comments and have one meeting to go over that, you've got it covered. I don't think we need to do this ad nauseum, that, one, we'll be, and I think doing it right in here would be good. And I think you'll be lucky if you see 4 or 5 people out there. And I'm being a pessimist, but that's what I'm thinking.
Marissa, I was going to pick up on that because that's not what the attorney has on here, but you said have one meeting, have it all, all the information put out there in several, types, but, and answer questions in advance that we know are hot buttons. And so we're really looking at one meeting, but I think we ought to have it in the community center just in case.
Right, and our attorney just put on there, based off of prior discussions
Right.
amongst the commission, that was what her wording was for, that the third meeting could be determined based on turnout for previous meetings. But yeah, there's no requirement that we would have to do 2 or 3 or in multiple. There's the requirement that we hold a public hearing.
Yeah, just legally, we have to give them a chance to comment. And we have to hear what they have to say and respond to it. That unless you're right, I mean, if there's 20, 30 people and there's issues, then you follow it up with another one. But
Do you think it'd be sufficient to judge where to have it based on the questions submitted to the city secretary? The number of questions committee.
Yeah, I think that would
If
be.
she gets a deluge of questions, then we say, whoops, it's gonna have to be in the city, it's gonna have to be in the community center. If there's not a deluge of questions, and that, to me, says there's not a whole lot of interest in it, we can have, like you said, in this room. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that? Or you just want to or do you want to have the appearance of transparency and book the Alamo Dome? I mean, what do you want to do?
My biggest concern is a lot of people are used to watching meetings online. It's available, it is something that they know is available to them, so that's why you won't see people here at council meetings most of the time. But I can tell you people are watching these meetings. So I'm not sure it would be the best idea to move it to a place that we can't stream the meeting when people expect that now.
Okay.
It's probably a good idea to plan for the max and get a minimum and then plan, as opposed to a minimum and get a max. So if we have overkill, that's better than.
That's not what I heard the city secretary say. What I'm hearing saying is, if we want to stream it, we're going to have to have it in here.
Couldn't set it up at the,
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
Other thoughts?
I think
I still-
in advance of the public hearing, I think we should come up with some, oh, I know this is a hot button and it needs to be in here. You know, everybody really look at this and say, oh, that's going to, you know, spur some question or some concern, because from what I've heard over the last, say, 2 years anyway, the concern is you have a portion of residents who don't want change. They don't want change, even though change, that's something that's gonna happen. And then the others are, you know, saying, okay, we realize we're gonna have change. We wanna know what the change is gonna be and maybe how it's gonna impact us, or if it's going to, because we love our gem of a city, you know. So I think what we need to do is make sure that we put out information to say, you know, over the last several years, we've done what we can to say we want to retain the character of Garden Ridge. However, we understand, or we know that change is coming, and we want to be, the city needs to be involved in what change we're going to allow in the next several years. And so, and because we're not Bulverde or Spring Branch or anything, we don't have land. So we just want to take care of our city in the future, but there will be some changes. So we need to put that out to them and give them the information in advance and deal with those hot button. No, we're not going to have a hotel. No, we're not going to have apartments and all that kind of stuff. So,
Would it suffice for each of the commissioners to come up with a list of 4 or 5 things that we think are hot button items, pool those responses at our next meeting, discuss them, and use those as a template for going forward and getting a PowerPoint together to put on the website, and go from there. I still think my idea about gauging some of the interest by the number of questions that are generated when we first release it will tell us where we have to have it. I'm thinking the 2 or 3 things that have filled this room in the last 4 years, stop me if I'm wrong. Deer. Yeah, deer's not in there. Okay, discussion of deer. Okay, we can fill this place, and you can tell when you drive up because the parking lot's full. And the other one was the hotels, and they thought it was going to be a hotel.
it's not the hotels, it's the thought that there might be.
Just a thought of yeah, because it wasn't in there anyway. And then the apartments. Those are the 3 I'm thinking about.
Now, there was questions, even on the garden home, because when the presentation
Okay.
was made by Mr. Oberlin about the garden homes, there was a lot participation from the
Yes,
public.
yes. I was lumping that in with, like,
No, do not throw that in with apartments. We are not having apartments.
well, yeah, but I'm saying, we know that, but the garden homes, we lean towards. I think we have to lump that all again into the density,
Yeah, well, that's how the other one got,
misconstrued.
yeah, we stopped it
Yeah.
because he was looking at high density, we said no.
It is.
Or the quarry, it's the quarry.
It's the core. But, yeah, so we have to say, we live in Garden Bridge. You know, we only want what's best for the city. And it's not high density in the few, acres we have left.
I think what we'll do is,
Yeah.
everybody come up with 5, we'll pool them together when we come back next month, and go from there. We can talk with our fellow neighbors and citizens that we know, and other interested parties. And that will also give us some time for the new changes in the city staffing, if you will, the elected officials, to digest what's out there, or what they've heard. Or should we can't release it to city council until we do that, yeah, we can.
One of the things that we have to do, Jim, when we put up there and we say, hey, we have a new ordinance, 13 that we're putting out there, this is probably one of the most boring documents that you can put in the public, given anything to come out in there. So we're having a public hearing on ordinance 13 about building ordinances and planning and zoning, and all the things in there, and everybody goes, well, I don't need to go to that meeting. That doesn't interest me at all. But when we talk to about changes in types of construction and what we're doing, 2252 is going to be huge, what we're doing there commercially, retail-wise, and that's going to probably bring more people in wanting to know what we're doing on that side of the road and how this affects that and some of the other residential. But if I was a longtime resident, I got in and said, oh, it's just another darn ordinance meeting about something they're trying to do, and my house has been here 20 years, it doesn't affect me. So how do we make this an exciting document to put out, and how do we convey that out in the public about, hey, this is really something that can affect you, that does affect you, whether you've been here a long time, you're not changing your build or do anything else, but what's coming in around you, how's it going to affect, and how we're trying to protect, our community. But again, how do you make a presentation out of a boring document?
We hit the high points, that's it.
And try to draw them into that thing. So that's,
Any other comments?
I'll try to work on the marketing scheme for that.
Homework, or,
He said it better than I did. I agree.
yeah.
It's going to be, and maybe coming up with here are some of the highlights that this may affect apartments, whatever. Well, if you want to get a crowd in.
No, we don't want that crowd.
But those kinds of things, development along the road. I mean, what kind of retail sales are we going to allow? What kind of restaurants potentially are we going to? Well, yeah, you got to tell them, but that's part of it.
Well, I think that.
Those are the things
Yeah,
that will get their attention.
Yeah. And I think that's summed up to me, that's summed up in the use chart. If they look through, if they peruse the use chart, they can see where
They
they're
will,
going.
but they won't.
We can tell
Get
them,
into that.
we can tell
We
them.
got it, that's what,
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. Bring out those things that you think will get their attention.
Mhm.
Right, here's the things this covers. Talk to us.
These are the things that are going to be discussed if we wish to discuss these things. This is your meeting. This is the public's meeting to come in and ask, what are we going to do about restaurants? What are we going to do about the roadways? What are we going to do about fences and those kind of things? Or, what's coming up in that? That's the most exciting thing happening in the city right now is
down there.
But the way you're wording it is exactly the way that I don't think it should be done, because then you'll fill the room with people with questions about that, and we could feed them the answers to the questions without necessitating filling the room and having them all riled up about something that's not in there anyway. Like the hotels, wasn't in there anyway. You know, the room was full about people, you know, fussing about the hotel, and it wasn't even in there. You know, so if you point those things out beforehand too much,
Well, I'm just saying about what this is addressing. This is not addressing, we're not doing the hotels, we're not doing the apartments. Let's say what it is addressing.
okay.
Okay, what that is, in other words, we can leave that verbiage out of that announcement kind of thing and say, okay, new things coming in the Garden Ridge, and talking about the ordinance that controls or designs that for the new retail spaces or the new light commercial, light industrial, continued growth of our community. Because we're gonna grow the tax base somehow.
We can't tell them what's coming in. That depends on a developer wanting to come in. All we can tell them is it's restricted to this area. That's really all we can tell them. You
This
know,
goes back to the use chart.
yeah. Once this passes, then developers that want to put in hopefully a Trader Joe's or something like that, this is where it would have to go. Nowhere else. Okay, and if we were to look at, I don't know. A Starbucks, yeah, we'd have to go over there too. But, and the land that's available for even garden homes for the residents that want to stay in Garden Ridge, it's gotta go here, or it's gotta go there. That's it.
I think we also need
discussion.
to point out the negatives. By that I mean tattoo parlors are allowed, but they're allowed,
In Bracken, no.
you know, where they're allowed, where the sex shops are. They are allowed, but they're allowed only so-and-so, so people don't have that question in the back of their mind. You know, it can end up down the street from me. Yeah, it's in there.
It's in there.
So I'm saying, as well as the positive things, we should tell them, you know, what's restricted. But again, it goes back to the use chart. They look at the use chart. So emphasis, I think, has to be made that there's a use chart in there that lines up pretty much everything that we can think of is in that use chart.
And the big X's are where it cannot go.
Yeah.
So,
So getting back to what Dave said, you know, we can say, look for this when it comes out, look for this, look for the use chart. You know? Yeah, it's gonna be necessary. Does anybody have problems with using this template that the city attorney has given us? Okay. So I think what we'll do is use the template she's given us, try to come up with, each of us come up with 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, or more, hot button items or things we think that should be emphasized, and then we'll pool that when we get together next month. And then we can figure out the verbiage and stuff to put it in here. Because again, the technical committee has not disbanded, but we're tired of looking at each other. And these have to be working meetings, so what we come up with has to be incorporated in the plan. The ordinance itself is not really changing. We're changing, what we're talking about now is how to present the ordinance to the citizens, which is what we said we could do without having a strategic committee. And that's something that's something else I neglected to say, that brought back from city council. I think I made it clear. I can look over to the city attorney that we didn't want to have a strategic committee. I didn't state it as such, but I was saying, you know, I don't think we can take care of that. We'll start discussing it already. And there was no objection to that, let's put it that way. No, it wasn't. Let's move on to business item 5, B2. We We have an update on the FM 2252 sewer project and the Txdot FM 2252 expansion.
Excuse me. I don't really have any update concerning 2252 expansion. I honestly have not heard anything any different. What this picture that's on the overhead here, or on the screen, depicts, I know last month I told y'all that our tank, the storage tank had been moved to a new location. And this picture depicts that movement. The original tank was supposed to, storage tank for the wastewater system was supposed to be down at Dewar Lane and Naco Loop. And now it has been moved down to the bottom curve on Naco Loop, close to where Winco is currently located. It's now being placed on city right-of-way.
Was it not before?
I'm sorry?
Was it not placed on city right
No,
away
it
before?
was not going to be on city right-of-way at the other location.
That answers the why.
I'm sorry?
That answers the why we moved.
Well, we found that we had some right-of-way that we could place it on. Yes. The green dotted line is the wastewater system route of line that's being installed currently. They're not finished installing, but they are very close to being finished.
Which end are they not finished installing? The one that goes under 3009?
They have a little segment along that route going towards, going under 3009. They do have a segment in there to still install, and they are still working on some installation along 2252.
I've lived here for 17 years. I can pretty much follow it, even though I can't see all the streets
Mm-hmm.
and everything in it. So I think they got a little loop down here on the right-hand side. Is the quarry under 3009.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And the other, rest of the green line is running along the railroad tracks.
Correct. The rear properties along the railroad tracks. Then as you see where that jumps up, that now is going on to,
That's Dewar Lane.
that's Dewar Lane, and then it's going to go to your left, and that is Naco Loop, or Nacogdoches Loop. And it's going to curve on up and go up to 2252, which is going to be the very top line.
And ends where? At the city line, city limits, or?
Very close to the city limits. Yeah, the dashed line is our city limits, but it's ending not quite at the city limits line, but very close to it.
Now, the question I had when I saw this is, I'm assuming it's expandable. By expandable, we laterally and go up and, well, it's hitting everything on 2252 except.
That one section towards 3009,
Yeah.
that can be accomplished with working with developers.
Okay, that's fine.
Just for my personal edification, I'm assuming that the effluent is being paid for and going into the San Antonio
No,
system?
it's going into, what we have designed here is going to be a pump and haul system. Everything is pressurized system that is going to be sent to the storage tank, and then it will be pumped out and
Into a-
hauled and disposed of with CCMA, Cibolo Creek Municipal Authority.
Okay, so that could be a busy junction down there then.
I don't think it's gonna be quite
No.
that busy,
Not at first,
not at first anyway.
until it gets,
Right.
On this
across them, in by the road tracks, three double line.
Yes.
So moving out, all of this, stuff's gonna travel a long,
Most pressurized system.
There's many communities that are operating with this type of system.
I stopped and looked at the piping, and I was still concerned about the diameter and the pressure and the distance and the gradient they were running at, pushing that grinder system to better work.
Yes, and that, you know, there's going to have to be a grinder system at each location that ties into the septic. But this is a system that many other cities are using.
So the tank,
I'm sorry.
oh, no, go ahead.
We were doing a 4-inch pipe. Pipe always looked like more of a 3-inch or. more
It's,
of
I
a
think it's
3-inch.
4-inch.
I do this.
In regards to the tank, it's going to be 20 feet, almost 21 feet tall. Is there like screening for that?
There will be some fencing.
Some fencing?
Yeah, there will be fencing,
Okay. Because
because we'll need to secure that location.
it's not open above, right? Is it going to, the tank is open on top?
The tank is fully enclosed,
It's fully enclosed? Okay.
fully enclosed.
I was,
And there will be a chemical system that will be part of that tank, and it will treat the effluent.
okay, just
So there will not be any odors.
the odor, I was concerned about that.
What is above ground?
Yes, it's above ground.
How well advertised has this been to the citizens on Nakaloo?
Well, they're finished laying the line on Nakaloo.
So you thinking that anybody that had questions will have asked questions by now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Have there been questions?
Periodically, we have some questions.
Any other questions from the commission? Let's move on to business item 5B3, the master land use plan. You know, I had a chance to look at that. Unfortunately, I got tied up thinking about the demographics and that other data right there at the front. We didn't get much further than that when I looked at this what you call it. Anybody else had any other questions about the master land use plan?
Be starting to reach out to some of these smaller communities to see how this trail could impact and how it could work with the cities in those, in that potential trail. So I don't know what their trail layout is gonna be, so I don't know if their proposed trail on how it's gonna connect, because it will come through here. It's gonna traverse from Austin, San Marcos, New Braunfels, Garden Ridge, or somewhere near, and then, you know, eventually get to San Antonio, to the Blue Hole, there where the San Antonio River originates, there by Incarnate Word University. So, just wondering how this map, I mean, I'm assuming we could maybe, I don't know how that will impact this master land use plan, because we do have some proposed trails here or future trailheads and trail routes. And I'm assuming this map, we could update it as it.
When I saw it, when they first proposed it, to be truthful with you, I didn't see how some of it was going to connect.
Oh, okay.
Because some of it, I believe was, proposed going down streets or something, wasn't it, or going through people's property, and I couldn't see how that was gonna happen.
Did they say it was coming through Garden Ridge or near Garden Ridge?
They just say,
They just said that they were near or through, they didn't get into specifics, but that they wanted to start that communication, that coordinating and talks.
I haven't heard from them yet, but Mr. Jackman had informed me already that they will be reaching out to us. But your land use map can be adjusted.
Okay.
Back to the agenda then. Let's get to 5B5, which is the infamous ordinance number 210, which tonight we have some, the possibility or we're planning to interview possible candidates for one of the vacancies on the Planning Commission. Our apologies, but I guess tonight was as good a night as any to see the city commission, Planning and Zoning Commission in action. We have working meetings, and we are limited to discuss things only in the meetings. We can't talk amongst ourselves before the meeting, after the meeting, and stuff like that about things we're going to talk about on the agenda. Mr. Hill, you got a good view of how we do things on the commission. Anybody want to start out? I guess what we'll do is have you come up and tell us why you want to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Excuse me. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'll try to talk. Well, I guess it is coming through. Okay. Well, my name's Todd Hill. I'm a recent resident. I moved here in June of last year. And I'm just very concerned. And I shouldn't say very concerned because things are already going fairly well. But I'm concerned about, can't hear me? Okay, let me do that. Can you hear me better now? Okay. I'm just concerned that that I could help with the way the city grows in the future. I want to be a part of that if that's a possibility. Something that's of great concern. I shouldn't say great concern. I'm just very interested in giving my time to the city and seeing that things move about in the way that's appropriate for all the citizens of the city. I feel I can best do that on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
We certainly welcome your interest. Where were you coming from?
I moved here from Virginia.
From Virginia, okay.
Lived a lot of different places.
Yeah.
York County, right then there by Langley. My wife was at Langley Air Force Base. She PCS'd here. We're planning on retiring here. That's why we took such a long time finding the exact place we wanted to live and retire. And we were very fortunate to find Garden Ridge. So we're very glad we ended up here.
Recently lived in Roanoke, so.
Okay, that's great. Beautiful area.
You got family in this area?
I'm sorry, say one more time.
Family?
In this area?
Yeah. What drew you to Garden Ridge? I mean, you just threw a dart at the map.
Well, my wife got stationed at Fort Sam. She's actually in the Air Force,
Okay.
but got stationed at Fort Sam. And we were looking for a city to retire. This is one of our, the San Antonio area was on our choice. And so we decided here, and then once we were looking, we didn't really know where in the area we would live. However, we took quite a long time researching the area, and once we found Garden Ridge, we knew it was the place. We liked the size, we liked the large lots, we liked the schools that are just wonderful, the proximity to the city, so just a lot of advantages. And it's a beautiful small town, and that's what we both enjoy.
You heard our discussion, then you know that over the last 3 years, some of the things you missed were some of the more contentious, you might call them contentious, things that the city, in retrospect, you look back at them and you say, yeah, you know, why we get so excited about it? But the city has known we're doing this rewrite of the ordinance for a while, and you can imagine, or you heard us talk about, somehow got out on social media that we were thinking about a hotel. And the room was filled with people who didn't want a hotel in Garden Ridge. And it wasn't even in the thing. I don't know how it got started. And another thing that years past, they didn't want garden homes. But, you know, demographics, you heard us also discuss the demographic is changing. A lot of the older residents wanted to stay here in Garden Ridge, but they didn't want to change. And they didn't want garden homes. They wanted to downsize, but there was nowhere to go. We didn't have apartments. Nobody wants apartments. Again, now let's say that word. And they really, at one time, they didn't want garden homes or townhomes. I think now we still don't want townhomes. We're open up to a developer possibly coming in with some garden homes. What are your feelings about that kind of thing? You said you liked the area because the large lots and the schools, which is certainly a magnet for growth.
It is funny you ask, because I was actually here for that meeting. Here at that meeting.
Oh, is that right?
That was very important to me. So.
Speak freely. I mean, you know,
I'll be happy to speak freely, as long as it doesn't hurt me too bad. I think the idea is very good. Well, good. We won't say very. Why am I using these words tonight? It's a good idea. However, he tried to, in my opinion, pack too many homes into that area.
Okay.
It just didn't make sense. And I realized some of it might have been to maximize the profit potential. Mm-hmm. However, I think you all know after the meeting, and I know as well, the citizens are not going to go for that high density of an area or that many homes. And I personally don't think we need that many garden homes to accommodate the people that are in Garden Ridge, which is who they're trying to market this particular idea to. I realize it won't only be the Garden Ridge citizens that move into that area. Another thing that I think is important to the citizens is if we do that, it needs to be age restricted. I think not having age restricted opens us up to issues in the future.
Well, Mr. Overman did have age restrictions on his.
Oh, I understand.
He also had high density.
Correct.
And that's where it got.
Absolutely. And that's the main reason I was here. Yeah.
And I think, well, I have a question for you.
Sure.
You say in your, why you desire to serve on the city commission, and you say something about, you want to give voice to all citizens by gathering community sentiment and carefully researching and reflecting on how those decisions will positively enhance the city for the benefit of all citizens. Great sentence. But you have citizens here, you have citizens there. So how do you look at balancing the group? That's the hard part.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I'm speaking to the choir here when I talk about trying to make everybody happy. We know that it's absolutely impossible. And that's why sometimes people at every level need to make hard decisions. All we can do is take the information that we have and the sentiment from the community and make the best decision that's necessary, or that's necessary for the city. And,
So do you think that has not been done?
oh, no, I absolutely don't think that that's an issue. I think I can only speak for the last 11 months. And the the way the city is now is beautiful. I don't have any particular issues with any ordinances. I just want to be here for the future to see that it stays that way.
I have another question unless somebody else has a question. Okay, so, you were able to witness one of our meetings. Are you aware of Ordinance 210?
I apologize, I'm not.
Okay, because that was on our agenda too, but in 210, that lays out attendance, it lays out decorum, it lays out various policies for commissions and to abide by. And one of the items on page 8 of 210 is social media.
Okay?
Okay, and it says, commissioners should be judicious in their use of social media. Commissioners in their official capacity representing the commission or the city will not respond, comment, or post opinion, views, or information on social media that relates to any matter the commission is considering, discussing, or recommending to city council. Would you have an issue with that?
Absolutely not. Not if I'm a member of city council, or not city council, the commission, I'm certainly going to follow the rules. And although I do enjoy social media a bit, I certainly would not discuss or respond regarding any issues.
It's tough.
Oh, I know it would be
because a
tough.
lot of things get put out on social media, right, wrong, or indifferent,
Mm-hmm.
and some of us will sit here and go, what they're saying is wrong, but we cannot engage.
That would be difficult. I mean, I could certainly
And that's why I'm bringing it up.
stop, correct. It would be tough. That's what's difficult, is because you,
Difficult for all of us.
correct. Because when it's wrong, you want to say something. But obviously, we need, I understand exactly where you're coming from. It'd be very difficult. I'm sure you all have that same issue.
So would that be difficult for you?
Well, I would not be truthful if I didn't say it wouldn't be difficult. It would be difficult.
But you wouldn't, you wouldn't
But I would, no,
engage?
I would not do it.
It's about the same rules and regulations the military has with social media. So I have multiple contracts with the military, and they scan any output that their contractors have on social media about anything, especially pertaining to the military and to your contracts. We get terminated immediately if you put a word. So even though 98% of our business is done through text and those things, I have to constantly remind staff, keep to your job, keep to the sentence at hand, or what is, don't respond to negative and even positive text. Sometimes we can't respond to. And they go, hey, didn't you get that text? Yep. And what did you do with it? Yep. That's it. And but I like that you do have a military background, and I don't know what kind of fight you and the wife get between the Army and the Air Force.
Yeah.
Stuff going on. So in there, we do know how. I mean, you're actually coming in, and you would be coming in at a good time, joining the commission, because we beat this horse to death, and we're going to come out with an excellent product. It's going to be extremely good for the community, and so getting new blood in and new thoughts and new drive and those kind of things in is always helpful. New volunteers, thank you for volunteering, period.
It's my pleasure.
It relates back to Jim said at 25.9% of people coming out and voting. Now, it's less than that for volunteers. So Appreciate you coming out. We're only meeting once a month. We were meeting for a long time, 2 times a month, or whatever it took. And everybody stood up to the challenge. We weathered that out. And first time we got to go to one meeting, we all went, yay, we're doing that. So, what are you doing currently?
Excuse me, currently, I'm not working, but there's a good reason. My wife, we've just been here a short amount of time. I have a 5-year-old, believe it or not. So I'm waiting for her to start kindergarten. And then there's several things. I'm self-employed myself, and I don't know that I'll actually go out and do a 9-to-5 job, but I'll be a lot busier once my daughter's in school full-time. Right now, she's just in pre-K. So, and I'm a real estate
You got a
investor.
full-time job now, okay, the 5-year-old.
This is the full-time job, is that what you said? Excuse me, I can't hear very
No,
well.
I said you got a full-time job with your 5-year-old right now.
Oh,
so-
I've already got a full-time job, correct. She's really something, yeah.
I'm a grandpa of 2 5-year-olds, one little boy and one little girl. I can't wait till they get 7 or 8, and so I can at least get some kind of normalcy in my home, so.
Correct.
I think what Commissioner Dow is trying to say is that we're all just like you. We're all just regular citizens. Some of us have a little bit of background in real estate or planning or things of that nature, but all of us basically just set as citizens. Looks like you got your hand, Phil. I'm looking at you got 5 children, and Annie's the 5-year-old.
Oh, I guess, did I put all their information? Yeah, Annie's my 5-year-old, my only daughter.
Yeah, I'm about to say, so she's got you wrapped around her finger if she's the only daughter. Pretty much. I can
She
see that
does.
now, yeah, and she's spoiled rotten. I can smell her from here. She's got 4 older brothers. There's no doubt about it. If she's the only girl. What disturbed you, or what were you impressed with or disturbed by that you witnessed tonight in the way that the meeting was handled? You have to understand, this is the only time we get to do business, is at the meeting. We can't talk about the things because of the Texas Open Meetings Act, TOMA, and we can't talk about anything on the agenda or anything beforehand. So sometimes it can seem like we're disoriented or groping for things, but this is the only time we get to really sit down and pick each other's brains about things. And sometimes it can be lively discussions, and sometimes we're sitting here like bumps on a log because it's just, cut and dry. I think over the years, this group is, we're spread out over several years. I'm probably the oldest. Well, I am the oldest sitting member right now. We just lost the oldest member recently for reasons beyond his control. He had to become a citizen of another state, and he wasn't eligible. Do you have any questions for us?
I don't have any questions. Did you want me to answer that about what impressed me and what disturbed me?
Please.
What impressed me, excuse me, I think I'm holding that too close now, is just how well you worked together as a group. It appeared that you worked very well together, and it was very civil discussion. As far as disturbing, nothing particular disturbed me. Just when somebody brought up apartments, I was a little disturbed by that. I know it'll never happen. At least I hope it'll never happen, and that's maybe one of the reasons I'm here, is to make sure it'll never happen. But, yeah, I was very happy to see the way y'all got along.
Chairman Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Hill, thank you for applying. I was just wondering, have you been able to, had a chance, I know you've only been here since you just moved in, but had a chance to review the master land use plan that has been adopted?
The one that you all are working on now?
No, the master land use plan that was adopted back in 2018.
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of it.
It's a planning document that
I have not had a chance to review that, no.
That's kind of what spurred the rewrite, the ordinance to accommodate that master plan. And that's where it calls out for how the city's going to grow, how it's going to be zoned, and calls out for special planning areas for, especially on the corridor, the 2252. So it'd be a good document for you to.
Absolutely.
And that's on the city's website for you to download and browse through.
That would be wonderful.
Get familiar with that.
I think it brings up, you brought up that there's going to be a lot going on 2252, and that's another thing that is very important to me. I only live, what do you think, about not even half a mile, quarter mile from 2252 and Batcave, because I live just up Batcave. So I'm probably more concerned than most about what the happenings on 2252 there.
Yeah, that master land use plan is a good document for, to get an idea of where the cities, what the plan is and, for the future. And it's a real good document, and it provided a lot of input from the citizens.
I'm definitely interested in finding out more. I know I've spoken to the ladies at the city, and they said, if things move forward, then I'll receive a bunch of information regarding what's currently going on,
Mr. Hill, the other thing is that, the whole thing started with master land use. However, now with the ordinance, and once the designations are made for the various districts, then if 2252 is designated, say, light retail, then somebody wanting to come in and do light retail, and that's what we're hoping, that your bistros, your, little restaurants and all this kind of stuff will go in. But there's only so much we can do once the designation has been approved. So we joke sometimes to say, oh yeah, we'll tell them to go to Bracken, But it's once the designations of the areas, get passed, then that opens it up for developers to start coming in, and then it's going to be difficult to say no to somebody just because we don't want a Trader Joe's or whatever. No, that's how it would kind of work. And that's why we had the attorney with us at pretty much every meeting, because she has to keep us on the straight and narrow as to, what is legal and what isn't. But with our city, there's really only a few places that 2252 is the largest strip, if you will, of what can be light retail. Not, because there's heavy commercial and things like that, which we have actually pushed further out 2252 as far as we can, because our city, gets landlocked.
Absolutely.
But in the scheme of things, you would need to really find a time away from your 5-year-old to look at the master plan, and also review Ordinance 210, and for sure review the ordinance that's in draft right now, that we've been talking about all evening.
Absolutely.
So, and questions on that would be good, because you would have a new set of eyes, to bring to the table and say, oh, well, I saw this. Because some of us have looked at it for so long, we're not sure what we see anymore.
Well, right, and strangely enough, if I end up on the commission, I do have here, several of those hot button issues that might, that might come up, I might see
Sure.
when I peruse the document as well, so.
Yeah, yeah. And so you have the questions in your mind. You might see if the answers are in the document, because they probably are. But, it just needs to be kind of looked at in its entirety. Because as one of our commissioners said, he had a question in the beginning because he didn't see something, and then as he read further, oh, there it is. So, we have several documents that are very important going forward.
That's great, thank you.
And I guess training too, right, Nancy? There would be training that would, planning and zoning is Interesting animal.
Yes, it is.
We got quite a bit going on in the city, and developing the 2252 is probably the most important thing. Towards this commission it is. And we finally come towards the tail end of rewriting the ordinance and releasing it to the citizens and seeing what they think about it. I'm sure they'll let us know, but we tried to cover everything possible for the future development of the city. And we all are really, really interested in it. And I see you have a background in volunteerism, and that's always welcomed, and tells me how you think about being involved with the city, and that's very important. Anybody else have any questions?
No, you asked all the ones up. Thank you for your service.
Yes.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I want to focus on pages 28 through, which is a use chart, and that gives you a lot of answers, 28 through 35.
Yeah, when we
In the proposed ordinance?
proposed ordinance, yes. There's a lot we'll have to get you caught up on. Certainly, what 2252, if you've only been here since last June, you're probably not aware of the plans for 2252 and the sewer and all those other things we were talking about. The city's been held back to a certain extent by the lack of a sewer system, and because the lots had to be a certain size and they had to have septic tanks and things of that nature. So when the sewer system comes on board, the hope is that it's going to open up development 2252 quite a bit, because you can put bigger sized establishments there and not have to worry about having a septic system for each establishment.
Certainly more attractive to developers, I'm sure.
Yeah. The only other thing I can tell you is, the city doesn't own 2252. We don't own 3009. We're at the mercy of Txdot for a lot of things that go along those things. 2252 is going to be widened. I think Batcave, the street on which you live, doesn't belong to the city or Txdot. I think that's a county road, county road, isn't it? It's a county road, see? Yeah, see? So it's a hodgepodge. Some of the things we talk about is a hodgepodge. But despite that, we've been able to get the city developed over the years. Any other questions? The other thing is, sometimes you may find this awkward. We're going to vote tonight as to whether or not to accept you. We'll do it right now, we need consensus, a motion. I need a motion
To recommend to city
to
council.
city council.
Yeah, we're recommending bottle.
That's okay, I was stumbling over words myself, so.
So we have to go make decisions.
Yeah.
We recommend everything we have to go to city council, and
The elected officials. Can I have a motion from my commissioners regarding Mr. Hill?
I make a motion that we move Mr. Todd Hill in recommendation for this commission to the city council.
Second.
Can I get a second? Got a second? A motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Mr. Hill, at this point in time, I'd like to say welcome aboard, but we have to take it to the elected officials on, when's the next meeting? City council meeting is June 2nd, okay?
Thank you very much, I
We'll take it
appreciate
there,
that.
and it might be to your advantage to be at that city council meeting in case they have some other questions. But they have not, have they ever turned anybody back? Do we say? He never turn you right back. No. Huh? I'm not gonna jinx him. We'll see you then. Our recommendation is to have you on board with the commission, okay?
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Section 5, B5 now. That's ordinance 210. We just did that. 1, 2, and what about the 3? Making recommendations related to application of ordinance provisions to commission members if needed. I don't know if that's needed or not. So let's do 5C, which is future agenda items. The one was the one for the homework. Everybody come up with 5, the main one. Anybody else got future agenda items? Seems like there was something.
We're going to continue discussion on 13.
Yes, we're going to continue this discussion on 13. Basically giving ourselves another month to look at it and peruse it, see if there's anything else we possibly missed, although I don't think there can be anything that slipped through the cracks after the most recent perusal. And I think that's it for adding for agenda items.
Chairman Miller, I have
Yes.
a question. Maybe I'm getting a little too ahead of myself on next agenda item, but looking at the master land use plan, there's an area there that calls for action plan for planning areas. I know the ordinance is not in effect yet, but as far as the master land use plan, has the city, has any property been acquired for any of these special or action plan areas where it does call out for the city to acquire this area for potential? I was just wondering if we could get maybe a status update on the master land use plan of what's been taken, or what has been, I guess, you know what I'm.
Property that perhaps has been annexed or.
Annexed or to accommodate the master land use plan.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a little too early right now, and maybe wait until we get the ordinance adopted, or, I was just wondering, just kind of out of curiosity,
We can,
a status update if any.
if commission wants to add it to the agenda, I can just very briefly update you on it.
I think it'd be advisable and unwelcome, a very brief update. I know the city staff is adjusting to some changes in the elected officials, and I know you guys got your hands full getting them up to speed on some of the things going on. Any other things to add to the agenda? Well, that moves us into item 6, which is the citizen comment period. And we have one citizen.
Two citizens.
Two citizens to talk. You guys know the rules. Limited to 20 minutes total. Each 2 minutes, well, 20 minutes total, 2 minutes per person, okay? Ms. Bauer, if you will.
Hi, Kay Bauer, 8947 Garden Ridge Drive in Garden Ridge. Wanted to thank you first for the point about social media. Just for clarification, one of the key concerns about social media and expressing opinions, whether it be commission or council, is because of the walking quorum concerns. Aside from it passively people inferring that it's a city position. So what was said was, I thought, well stated. Also, I would refer you to the master land use plan, those maybe who are newer or are considering joining. If you ignore page 189, where it has a picture of what appears to be a Shriners Convention representing our city staff. But also, on that note, I discussed this with Nancy recently, the percentages in here and so on reflect the last survey that we did. And my personal opinion, I don't have any facts to back this up, my personal opinion is some of these percentages have changed in the last 3 years, so that they still would be good talking points to go forward. These represent survey questions and where our citizens were at the time. And so I would reflect on that. And I don't personally know also if the Lone Star Rail District project is still on the books. That could put a railroad station right behind Mr. Overman's proposed project in that general vicinity. So it's just, these are just factors that I think I would encourage everyone to address when you look at the master land use plan. And I encourage anyone. Also, one last thing, our newly elected council member and I have discussed the feasibility of PowerPoint and so on, and creating a presentation and using the information that we've had in former city halls and town hall meetings and so on, presentations as a way to approach our citizens now. So we'd like to be considered in that arena. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer. Does the other citizen have anything he wants to add? Okay. Then I guess we're at item number 7. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
I got a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
We adjourned at 8:10. Not too bad.